All right, we start tonight with breaking news and details about the investigation into this horrific, tragic Florida high school shooting. Now, the 19-year-old gunman, Nikolas Cruz, he has now confessed to slaughtering 17 innocent people and wounding at least a dozen others. Now, Cruz is also telling investigators details of the sinister attack. He shot students in the hallway. He fired into 5 separate classrooms. And Cruz also confessed to authorities that he had extra ammunition in his backpack. Now, we're also learning disturbing new details of missed warning signs in what is now one of the worst mass shootings in American history. All of the red flags were there, but tragically, Nikolas Cruz was able to commit this heinous act. Now, the FBI is in fact confirming tonight that in September, a YouTube user with the name Nikolas Cruz, spelled the name the same way as the shooter, was reported to the Bureau for writing, quote, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." Now, the man who reported the comment says that the FBI visited him the following day, but the Bureau is saying today that it could not be determined the time, the location, and actual identity of who posted the comment. Now, our own Catherine Herridge, as she noted earlier today, all the FBI would have had to do is trace the IP address, which is a routine practice, to determine the location of the individual. For some reason, it didn't happen in this case. Now, the mayor of Broward County is saying that Nikolas Cruz was being treated at a mental health clinic but stopped seeking treatment more than a year ago. And authorities are describing his social media posts as beyond disturbing. Just take a look at some of these pictures. You can see the suspect. He's seen posing with guns and knives and even dead animals. And former classmates of Cruz say he was a loner. He was obsessed with firearms. He liked to show off pictures of all of his weapons. Now, the Miami Herald is reporting that Cruz had been suspended for fighting and having ammunition in his backpack, and Cruz was then later expelled for disciplinary reasons and was attending a school in Broward County for at-risk students. Cruz also had problems at home. Both parents adopted him, and his brother are dead. His mother passed away in November. Now, the suspect was staying with a friend's family, and there were also reports of Nikolas Cruz having ties to a Florida-based white supremacist group. But law enforcement said earlier today that they haven't seen any of those connections. We'll continue to monitor. What's also very troubling tonight is how students are describing their former classmate. Now, this is what they say about the shooter, Nikolas Cruz. Let's watch.
He definitely had just something a little off about him. But it was just more or less that he was aggressive and quiet and shy about when he got aggressive.
Personality was very different.
He was a bit off. He would curse randomly in the middle of lunch. You know, he would just scream out random curse words, and he always just seemed a little bit off. You know, just something was wrong with him.
That it was a lot of crazy stuff that he did. Just not right for school. He got kicked out of school multiple times for this kind of stuff. Honestly, a lot of people were saying that it was going to be him, stuff like that. We threw a lot of kids threw jokes around like that, saying that he was going to be the one to screw up the school. But it turns out, everyone predicted it. That's crazy.
Now, just like with other mass shooters, there were signs, there were warnings of mental, social, emotional problems, but all the pieces were never put together to prevent this tragedy from happening. And like with many other shootings and terrorist attacks, Nikolas Cruz was telegraphing his intentions all over social media. Now, aside from the obvious fact that anyone that would commit these horrible acts of evil and violence are completely deranged, the one commonality between the gunman in Parkland, Florida, to Sutherland, Texas, to the church in South Carolina, Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, are mental health issues and mental illness. Now, during an address to the nation earlier today, the president offered his deepest condolences, and he highlighted this issue of mental health. Let's take a look.
We comfort the grieving and the wounded. And we hurt for the entire community of Parkland, Florida, that is now in shock and pain and searching for answers. To law enforcement, first responders, and teachers who responded so bravely in the face of danger, we thank you for your courage. We are committed to working with state and local leaders to help secure our schools and tackle the difficult issue of mental health. Later this month, I will be meeting with the nation's governors and attorney generals. We're making our schools and our children safer will be our top priority. It is not enough to simply take actions that make us feel like we are making a difference. We must actually make that difference.
Profound words from the president saying it's not enough to feel better, it's got to make a difference. Now, the president is planning to visit Parkland, Florida, and offer comfort and support to the community. Details have not yet been finalized. Also, predictably, within hours, Democrats, the liberal media, they race as they always do to politicize a tragedy and try to blame, believe it or not, President Trump and Republicans. Let's take a look.
Step up, be a man, and talk about it, and stop thinking about the NRA and your next campaign donation. Just stop. Everyone knows what you're doing, and it's time. That does it for us this morning. Stephanie Rule picks up the coverage right now.
Thanks so much, Mika. Thanks, Joe. And to Marco Rubio, you don't have to step up and be a man. Step up and be a human.
Words of consolation, talk about mental health, are simply not enough. They must be followed by real action. The president has to lead or get out of the way.
The people have got to say enough is enough. We're not continuing with all these massacres. And we've got to have the representatives of the people in the halls of government respond to that.
This has happened with Republican administrations, under Democratic administrations, but what you see there, it's shameful, it's disgusting, but it's not surprising because it's so predictable. It happens every single time there is a shooting. Hollywood celebrities, they were also quick to post their hateful messages, of course, aimed at the president. Republicans on Twitter. Let's start with Chelsea Handler tweeting, quote, "We have to elect candidates that are not funded by the NRA in November. We have an opportunity to elect candidates who won't allow kids to go to school and get shot. It's disgusting how many times this has happened, and Republicans do nothing. You all have blood on your hands." Bette Midler, another school shooting, this in Florida. Congrats to the spineless cowards who do nothing to help us stem this horrific epidemic in Congress. And Director Adam McKay posted, "Normal person, oh my God, kids are being killed in schools, churches, concerts. Let's do something. Republican congressman, kids are being killed in schools and churches and concerts. Let's not do one single thing. Hashtag blood on your hands at GOP and at NRA." Author Stephen King writes, Broward school shooting. There will be prayers from Blabbermouth Don, Pence, and the Grinch, and their right-wing cohorts. There will be no call for any sort of sane gun regulations. Now, that, sadly, is the left solution every single time this happens. They rush to judgment, they want to point fingers and blame, and use all kinds of vicious, horrific rhetoric. It never accomplishes anything. Now, they shouldn't be what these tragedies are about here. You have people rolling out the same old, tired talking points and political arguments. You know, liberals, they start blaming the weapon that the shooter used, in this case an AR-15. But if they want to ban AR-15s and these madmen, they will use something else. We saw that at Virginia Tech, where a gunman used a pistol and killed 32 people. Look, let's get to solutions tonight. I have been in radio for 30 years of my life. This is my 23rd year at the Fox News Channel. I know all of the talking points, and I know it's all just noise, and it's not going to solve the problem. Here's a simple truth. You're not going to change people's minds with a political debate, especially as it relates to the Second Amendment. I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. My mind's not going to be changed. I've thought this through all these years in my life, and I doubt I can change the minds of any of these Hollywood liberals and the anti-Second Amendment crowd. The problem this country is facing right now is school safety. Now, we can keep repeating the same talking points and talking over each other again and again and again after something like this happens, or maybe it's trying to actually find a solution to this problem. The children of this country deserve to be protected. They deserve safe schools. As the president said, no child, no teacher should ever be in danger in an American school. We can all agree on that. No parent should have to fear for their son or daughters when they kiss them goodbye in the morning. Now, I want to lay out a solution that I think is not political, and frankly, I believe any reasonable person can agree on. This is about the safety and security of students and children in our schools. And every single school in the country needs immediately a comprehensive threat assessment done by law enforcement professionals. Every school has a unique situation. And for those that will say, oh, where are we going to get the money for this? Well, I would argue that it's probably more than likely local police, local FBI would be happy to help schools figure out the best plan of action to protect these kids and keep them safe. Now, you're going to have to secure the perimeter of every school. All points of entry must be secure. You got to make sure that there is a system that controls who is going in and out of the building. And in addition to that, you'll need a strong physical security presence. And you can start by hiring trained, armed, former or retired police officers, trained, armed, former, retired, armed military veterans. In other words, let's give our kids the same security that most politicians that they get. Let's give them the same protection that actors and actresses get on the red carpet when they're at the Oscars and pretty much everywhere else they go. We have plenty of retired officers, plenty of trained professionals, plenty of trained military guy. They can conceal their weapons, but their very presence also with a strategic plan that is properly implemented will bring about a profound change. I know there are probably detractors out there. They're going to say, but Sean, Parkland, Florida High School, they had an armed security guard. Okay, here's the thing. The school has 3,000 students. It's one of the biggest campuses in Florida. You're going to need more than one person to properly assess and deter any potential threat at a facility that large. We need enough people to protect every single building, every point of entry, and the entire perimeter. Now, some of you will argue, okay, this is going to cost money. You're right. My answer is yes. But is it not worth every penny so that we never, ever have to turn on our TVs like yesterday and see this unfold ever again like what happened in Parkland? Now, here's another point about the plan. Now, we already know it works. I broadcast from New York City, and post 9/11, you cannot enter a single office building without a work ID. I have a radio building I enter. I have a TV building I enter. And if you're a visitor in any of these buildings, you have to present a valid identification, or else you're not getting in, and you have to be vouched for by people that have been secured and already in the building or work in the building. Every student can have their own valid ID before entering the school, and also, where needed, metal detectors, which have already proven to be effective in some schools in the country. Here's the bottom line. We are at a crossroads. It's time to either step up, do our job, create school safety that will work for these kids. Give them the same safety our politicians, actors, actresses, and famous people get. And instead of bringing out the same old talking points and trying to score cheap political points and trying to outdo each other with the same arguments, same attacks, nobody's mind's being changed. Maybe for once we could solve the problem. And this should be all about solutions. Now, I'm not saying this plan is flawless. Nothing is ever going to stop 100% of these things from happening. There is evil in the hearts of other people, unfortunately, in this world. But why wouldn't we try to do every single thing we can do in this case to prevent these tragedies from occurring and make them less deadly if, in fact, they do happen? Here's a simple test and a question for everybody tonight I think they can ask themselves. If, God forbid, you ever found yourself in any type of administrative building and that building has an active shooter, would you prefer to know that there are trained, armed, retired military and police already on site to give you a fighting chance? Would you want to know that there was a complete threat assessment, security assessment on that building that was completed? My guess is you probably would. Now, here's our final point. Democrats, they say gun control leads to less violence. Well, if that's the case, I'd like them to explain why cities with the highest murder rates have the strictest gun control and are run by Democrats. Look at these stats about the number of murders in 2016. All of these cities have Democratic mayors and have been run by liberals for years. Yet their crackdowns on the Second Amendment, it has done nothing to stop violence. Liberals also don't want you to know about these shocking statistics. During the Obama presidency, there were over 3,900 murders in his adopted home town of Chicago, and more than 18,000 people who were shot in Chicago just during the last 6 years of his presidency. Now, did you remember hearing this kind of outrage and blame by the left about the out-of-control violence? That's one American city. And liberals also love to say that giving people the right to carry doesn't prevent crime. the figures say otherwise. Let's take a look at some of the charts given to us by author, More Guns, Less Crime, John Lott Jr. from the Crime Prevention Research Center. The chart shows violent crime before and after right to carry laws were enacted in the U.S. And as you can see, having more citizens armed leads to a decrease in violent crime. Here's another graphic on murder rates before and after right to carry laws were put into place. Also in the U.S., murders have plunged as a result. And as John Lott Jr. points out, as more people carry guns, you see further drops in both of those statistics. All right, a lot to absorb. The answer is we got to protect our kids. We don't need to tune into what we saw yesterday ever again. Let's start solving the problem.